What's up? It's Marco, Sage of Soccer, and today I'll be talking about the U.S. men's national team center back situation, more specifically on Walker Zimmerman. If you weren't aware, his team Nashville have recently exited the MLS playoffs, and that means that Walker Zimmerman will not be playing a game over a month before the World Cup starts. He'll be coming into the tournament ice cold, and I think it's time to reevaluate whether he should be a starter. I think that I've made my feelings pretty clear on the matter on this channel, but I think it's a good time to reiterate my feelings. I think the lack of playing time will only add on to the issues that are already plaguing his skill set. Forgetting the game against England, because everybody's going to be struggling in that one. Against Wales, I think his lack of pace will be a real struggle for him as he goes up against attackers like Daniel James and Brennan Johnson. And then against Iran, I see him struggling with the movement of like a really good striker in Taremi and maybe Osman if he's back by that time, and he'll likely be coming off the bench. And that's not to mention his ability on the ball. He is able to hit passes while he's not under pressure, but that's really not a skill. I cover college soccer, even college soccer recruiting, and it's something that's so common that I don't even look for it anymore. His big issue is when he's under pressure, he's not able to keep up with the speed of play, and it results in him giving the ball away. This is also a big problem with Aaron Long, who is in a similar situation, but this isn't about him. I feel like it's kind of mean at this point to dogpile on him. And I don't think anything I said is particularly controversial. We've seen his weaknesses on the ball, it's pretty clear that he's not the best athlete we have, and he is only playing at an MLS level. But despite that, a lot of people are calling for him to start. So I was really wondering, how did we get in this situation? Because I look at my current depth chart, and he's not even my first backup. And, I know Chris Richards is dealing with injuries, Miles Robinson is out, John Brooks got frozen out of the team, but still, I want to take a look at his time with the U.S. national team, and it is only the national team because he's just been a consistent top-class MLS center back since 2017. So what I wanted to do is go over every single one of Walker Zimmerman's games in the U.S. men's national team jersey and talk about how I think he did in those particular games. You could disagree with how I feel. Let me know if you thought that he had a good game, if I say he had a bad game, a bad performance, if I think he had a good one. But let's get started running through this. And the first game was really not too much. It was just 7 minutes in a friendly in an MLS-only camp against El Salvador. I personally thought he should have started over Aaron Long to partner Mark McKenzie, but it wasn't too much to go on. Then after that, he got 45 minutes in a friendly against Costa Rica, and I thought he was fine. I thought he played the same level as Tim Ream, but worse than Mark McKenzie. After that, we had the Gold Cup, where I thought Walker Zimmerman looked very good in 2 games against Haiti and Martinique alongside James Sands. He played well with the ball and dominated against the weaker opposition. And I actually thought he was better than Miles Robinson in those games. However, then there was the game against Canada after that, and while he was injured early, I think his flaws really started to show as we were getting pressed by a better team. And at the time, I thought he didn't show enough to get ahead of Mark McKenzie, and I actually had him behind John Brooks, Miles Robinson, McKenzie, Chris Richards, Matt Miazga, and Tim Ream on my personal depth chart. After that, we have World Cup qualifying. He came in to start against Jamaica, and I thought he was fine. I personally thought Miles Robinson was the better performer, and I would have preferred Chris Richards to play in that game. Then he started the loss against Panama. However, I didn't think he was the problem that game, and I thought he was one of our few positives in that performance. Though I feel like we have to remember the Nations League game we played against Honduras where just a dead performance, and John Brooks took it upon himself to make something happen. Just wanted to throw that out there. After that, he got a few minutes off the bench against Costa Rica, which is good that I don't have to talk about because that was the one game I just was unable to cover. Then he started the 2-0 win against Mexico, and again, I thought he was one of our weaker performers. I thought he was struggling on the ball despite being alright defensively, and I thought that was Miles Robinson, who was really the really good player in our defense. And then after that, there was the away game against Jamaica, where Zimmerman was terrible in that game. This game was the reason I didn't want him in the team. Jamaica made Walker play out of the back, and he just gave the ball away constantly. It was getting ridiculous how much he would have the ball and just kick it straight back to the Jamaican team. And on top of that, he got beat on a corner, which should have given Jamaica a winner, but thankfully the ref bailed him out. And I think this was the point. It's okay, I don't really want him in the team. I had him below John Brooks, Chris Richards, Miles Robinson, and I even wanted Matt Miazga called in over him. I'm not sure I'd agree with that one now, though he has been pretty good since he returned to the MLS. So in between World Cup qualifying matches, there was the Camp Cupcake game against Bosnia, which was terrible, but he was one of the better performers. I think he really outshined Henry Kessler, who was alongside him. Then back to World Cup qualifying, I thought his weakness on the ball held us back against El Salvador despite solid defending. Then he rebounded with a really strong performance against Honduras, which included a goal. And then we reached March, which I feel like was the point we really should have been integrating Cameron Carter-Vickers, Eric Palmer-Brown into the squad, not to mention bringing back John Brooks. Against Mexico, he had a very good defensive performance, but was bad on the ball. I think I started calling him a 2006 defender at this point, saying like, okay, if this was 2006, he'd be fine, but the game's evolved. You have to be good on the ball as a center back, and he's not that. Then against Panama, I called Walker and Miles Robinson both good CONCACAF players in a game where we qualified for the World Cup, and I wanted to celebrate, not critique anybody. That's almost a backhanded compliment. And then after that, we were already in the World Cup, so I decided to raise the standards for our game against Costa Rica, where once again, Walker Zimmerman was battling the ball and beat to a set piece for a goal. Again, I called for John Brooks to return to the team, and I want to know, at what point in the cycle did he become a locked-in starter? John Brooks, Chris Richards, Miles Robinson were all ahead of him in my eyes, and I was calling for Cameron Carter-Vickers and Eric Palmer-Brown to get a lot of time in the Nations League. Not to mention the return of Mark McKenzie, who is a much more talented player, though extremely inconsistent, and I would personally have Walker Zimmerman ahead of him now, but I feel like we should have been testing Mark McKenzie. Now we're in the pre-World Cup stage. In the friendly against Morocco, I thought he had a good 45 minutes, including a pass to Christian Pulisic, which set up a goal. Then weirdly enough, against Uruguay, I thought he was weak defensively, but all right on the ball. And in those last two games, I thought Cameron Carter-Vickers had a very good performance, while Eric Palmer-Brown was pretty poor. But in fairness to Eric Palmer-Brown, when Walker Zimmerman was forced to come off the bench like the rest of the center backs were doing against Grenada, he was really bad when he came off the bench. He might have been the worst player on the pitch in a game where every American looked pretty bad. Then was ruled injured for the next game, so maybe that was part of it as well, though. Then Zimmerman was, alongside Aaron Long, a major reason for our loss against Japan. He was terrible run press and showed that when a team really preps for him as a center back, he could be exposed easily. Then again, against Saudi Arabia, he was able to pick out a pass when given time, but he wasn't able to impact the game, and once again, I called for John Brooks to return to the... So those are the 20 games. You might disagree with some of my opinions. Maybe you think I value ability on the ball a bit more than I should, but those are my thoughts. At the moment, I have him currently as like a 4th/5th choice center back, because I think it's important to have like a veteran presence on the team, and I think that makes up for the difference between the talent of him and Mark McKenzie, Eric Palmer-Brown, and Austin Trusty. That being said, I have him on the bench behind Chris Richards, Cameron Carter-Vickers, and John Brooks. I think John Brooks' ability on the ball and ability in the air is much better than Walker Zimmerman. I think he reads the game better, and because he's a left-footed center back, he'll have Anthony Robinson next to him to cover for his lack of pace rather than Serginho Dest on that right-hand side. So I feel like he's a much better fit for our team. Then Cameron Carter-Vickers has been great for Celtic. He's tasted Champions League action as well, where he hasn't been great, but it's a very good experience to have. And when he played in the Championship, where many of Wales' players are from, he was dominant, and I feel like that Wales game is going to be huge for us. So I think Cameron Carter-Vickers' experience really helps him out and should make him a starter. In addition, he's a bit better on the ball, and I like his athleticism more. Then we have Chris Richards, who's our best center back. Great athlete, talented on the ball, reads the game well. He's everything you need for a center back to be great at the highest level, and the only thing against him right now is the lack of playing time, which is the same issue as Walker. For Walker Zimmerman himself, despite mixed performances in my eyes, I think that he's a pretty consistent player, which definitely has its value. We've seen John Brooks be very inconsistent in some of these games. I think his level of defending remains the same despite who you face. So if he's against a weak opposition, he'll be a great player. But if we're against a strong opposition, I start to worry. And if we face a team that decides to press us, then I'll get really worried because he's consistently responded the same way to pressing. Being good on the ball when given time, but giving the ball away constantly when being pressed. That being said, I think that his consistency And while I haven't really seen this on the field, the fact that he's been giving the captain's armband a ton leads me to think that he's a pretty good leader, and he responded well to being just snubbed from the team outright, then coming in and playing well. So I think he'll be good for a locker room in a team that really lacks veterans. He's a decent player, and I think he should be in the squad, but he's definitely not our best option to start. I don't think he was our best player in World Cup qualifying, but I think he should be on the plane. And yeah, that's my opinions on Walker Zimmerman. Right now, for my starting center backs, I'd be going with Chris Richards and Cameron Carter-Vickers. If Richards isn't able to go, John Brooks steps into that spot. So yeah, that's all I'll talk about right now. See ya.